All right. Hearing me now, ladies?
Yes, sir, we're hearing you.
Okay, good. So for today's class, what we're going to do, we're going to look at apprenticeship system. We would have already have an idea of apprenticeship. Could somebody remind me about apprenticeship, please?
Sir, apprenticeship is the proposals that were given in an effort to improve the conditions of slavery rather than give them full emancipation. It also served as a means of delaying emancipation of the enslaved.
But would you say apprenticeship was to improve the conditions?
No, sir. Well, not really.
Which one would have been the way of improving the conditions?
Amelioration.
Sir, I mean,
Amelioration.
Amelioration.
Yes, sir.
Amelioration is the
Sir,
improving the condition. Go ahead.
sir, I'm so sorry. I mixed them up. I'm so sorry, sir. Apprenticeship is like the period between emancipation where the slaves had to work for the masters for wages.
All right, go ahead, Giselle, and then Brianna.
Yes, sir. So it was from 1834 to 1838, and it was just to ensure a smooth transition from slavery into freedom or emancipation.
Yes, very good. Go ahead, Brianna.
Yes, sir. And I was saying that to the British, it was a way of teaching them how to become free people before actually getting emancipation.
Very good. Yes. So those were some of the reasons for apprenticeship. So we're going to go a little deeper into apprenticeship for today. So we would have discussed some of the aims of apprenticeship from the discussion that we would have had just now. That one, all right, and this is one of my problems when it comes to apprenticeship, right? Historians disagree completely when it comes to this topic. Some historians say that slavery ended in 1834, August the 1st, 1834, while some historians argue that slavery ended in 1838, right? In the British colonies. Some historians say that the period of apprenticeship was not slavery. Do you agree with them? Was the period of apprenticeship slavery?
it kind of was, sir, in a little way. It wasn't like,
Yes, sir.
it wasn't like that extreme, sir, but it was in a way.
All
Sir, I
right.
would say it wasn't slavery.
It wasn't?
Because, sir, isn't slavery when you work, when someone owns you and you work, you don't get any type of money or anything like that? Weren't they, getting money or something?
Yeah, but they only get money for overtime work.
Yes, sir, because I remember reading that they had to work like 40 odd hours a day still for their
Yeah.
not well, that doesn't make any sense. Not 40 odd hours a day, but over 40 hours. So I believe that if you're not completely free, that you're under slavery because they didn't receive pay unless they went into overtime. So they were still performing 40 plus hours of work for their masters.
All right. I agree with your point, Emmings. Go ahead, Nelson.
Well, sir, since you said that they only got paid for overtime work, then I would have to say that yes, it was slavery because they would have been doing the same thing from before plus more hours, and I'm sure that the money that they got was not enough, even nearly enough.
And that is even if they get the money. That is another question. So, ladies, some of the aims of apprenticeship is that one, it was a period of peaceful transition from slavery to full freedom. It trained the apprentice. So during the period of apprenticeship, they don't call the enslaved people slave again. They call them apprentice. to become free people. Another reason was that it gave the colonial government enough time so they could adjust the society to welcome the freed people. So all the laws that were on the books, the slave laws, they could repeal those slave laws, put institutions in place so that the society could become free. Another is to prevent a flight from the plantation. Because if say, for instance, they gave them full freedom on August the 1st, 1834, most of the enslaved people would have left the plantation. And that was what happened on August the 1st, 1838. You get your freedom. It's like when school over. Well, Andrews is not like that. When I was going to Jamaica College, right? And before 2 o'clock reach, the gate was very, very, very full. And you see, once that gate opened at 2:15, trust me, it's a fight to get through the gate because it's like you just need to just leave.
Sir,
And that was
I had
go
that
ahead.
experience, sir, when I was in grade 8, sir. And
Mhm.
school normally over like 2:15, sir. But the
Yeah.
teachers, them tired of us, sir. So them let we out like 2 o'clock, 2:05, sir. So go down to the gate. Sir, when you go down there, sir, the amount of children you see. And even though school don't over as yet, them still pushing the security to open the gates, sir, because it look like we're in something. Yeah, sir, you know, when you're just tired of somewhere, so you just want to leave.
Yes.
That was how we felt, sir. And when 2:15 comes, sir, it was a job. It was a job to get through.
Yes, that was our thing because when I was going to school, that was it. I've been out there sitting in my car at 2, and I see 1 or 2 girls walking briskly to rush and catch the bus before the what you call it, the Queens girls reach to the bus park, uh, or the only
First
childhood girl.
child.
But overall, though, you don't have that level of, because Andrews is not really like an enslaved place. It's a free society, right? So also to supply, 1 second, I'm coming. Another reason is to supply, to ensure that the planters had a ready supply of labor. And for some historians, they argue that apprenticeship was a way in which people prolonged slavery. Some disagree because some said slavery ended 1834, others said 1838. Could somebody read this from Williams Green for me?
Sorry, I'll read.
Go ahead.
Aims of apprenticeship. It offered important strategic advantages to the European established. It afforded missionaries additional time to mold the thinking of the apprentice to encourage habits of industry, to build churches and establish stable social patterns that would induce freedmen to remain settled. William Green.
Very good. Thank you very much, Emin. So one of the main way in which they are going to train the enslaved people in becoming free people, train the enslaved people, well, the apprentice at this time, to be free or how to operate in a stable society. No, I was discussing this part with my wife last night to encourage habits of industry. You don't see that them out order. What they mean by to encourage habits of industry? What they mean by that? You read it just now. Emmons, to encourage habits of industry. What do you think they are talking about?
Okay, I'm coming, sir. I'm thinking.
Sir, would it be like work?
To work.
Sir, like,
Yes, so that they could be, have habits of, it be industrious, always working and, have a go. You don't think that was rude?
Of
Yes,
course.
sir. They're like indirectly calling them lazy.
Yes, that's what they were doing, indirectly calling them lazy, because you can't say that you are going to encourage habits of industry when they were the ones who were doing all the work on the plantation. That makes no sense. But that was one of the aims of apprenticeship. Let us look at the reaction, how the different groups would have reacted to apprenticeship. Somebody, could you read this for me, please?
Neither slaves nor planters were consoled by apprenticeship. The former wanted complete freedom, the latter, resenting their loss of arbitrary power and feared the disintegration of social system. William Green.
So one is that, thank you very much, the enslaved people, for sure, they wanted full freedom. And worse if they hear that, which two colonies went straight to emancipation and didn't have apprenticeship?
Antigua and Cayman Islands.
Barbuda and Cayman Islands.
Very good. Now, if you are in Jamaica or you are in Barbados and you hear that, listen, you know that Barbados, in Antigua and Cayman didn't went through apprenticeship. They got their full freedom right now. You're going to want your full freedom. You're going to want your full freedom. But the planters, somehow, they are very upset because they felt like they were going to lose their power, their authority, and their property. Now, terms of apprenticeship, we would have looked at some of these terms already. One of the terms is that the apprentices were now able to buy their freedom. The apprentice received regular allowances such as oatmeal, flour, rum, clothing. Children under this age of 6, they were freed. They implemented a 40.5-hour work week. Once you work beyond 40.5 hours, you were supposed to receive wages. And one of the major things that happened is that was the establishment of the stipendiary magistrates. So these magistrates are now going to monitor the apprenticeship system in the Caribbean. And these magistrates, ladies, the stipendiary magistrates, they were retired servicemen, usually men from the Army or the Navy, very old. They didn't came to the Caribbean with their families. And they came to the Caribbean to monitor the the system of apprenticeship. They were appointed directly by the British Crown. So the British government, they were the ones who would have appointed them. What were some of the roles of the the stipendiary magistrate? One, their main role was to protect the apprentice. These are the enslaved people, against overwork, maltreatment, and the abuse of planters. But before I go to that, why do you believe that Britain would have implemented the stipendiary magistrate? What was the experience like before why they would have implemented this? Which system would have failed?
The amelioration.
The amelioration proposal, because one of the reasons why the amelioration proposal failed was that they didn't have anybody to monitor the system. Now, Britain tried to improve apprenticeship, improve the system of apprenticeship by appointing the stipendiary magistrate so they could protect the apprentice against overwork, maltreatment, and abuse. Yes, go ahead.
Sir, would it like one of the reasons why they implemented, they placed them there, sir, was to like prevent revolts from happening, sir, because you know if them overwork and them mistreated, you know them going to revolt because they're going to want their freedom.
Full freedom, that could have been also another reason behind the thinking. Yeah, and I completely agree with you. Yes, so they could put in the system, so the apprentice could say, you know, that Britain really trying to fix this system so we can get full freedom. Because look, Britain sent all of these old white men to monitor the planters. Yes. So also what they're going to do is that they're going to be the mediator between the planters and the apprentice. They are going to go around the plantations to inspect the plantation, the hospitals, the prison. They are going to receive complaints from the apprentice. They are going to assist them in the court because remember right now, they could take them to court, right, and bring evidence against them. They are going to represent them in court, and also the apprentice reported directly to the governor, right? But while all of this sound good on paper, usually things on paper doesn't work. Go ahead, Barkley.
Sir, question. You remember how we said that many of the governors were pro-slavery? So if the stipendiary magistrates are like reporting to them that, oh, so and so Master John is disrespecting or he's not treating coffee away, you know, the governor not going to do anything about it because isn't he pro-slavery?
Well, some of the governors at the time. No, we're going to use, well, I'm going to use Jamaica as an example. Jamaica had a governor by the name of Governor Sligo. That's where the Sligoville came from. The name Sligoville came from. And Governor Sligo, he was the one who had major problem with the planters because he said that he was going to implement the system, apprenticeship, and that apprenticeship should work. And because of that, the planters didn't like Governor Sligo. So in some colonies, the governors are going to play a blind eye to it, while in other colonies, with the example of Governor Sligo, William Green in his book said that Governor Sligo was very determined to implement the system according to the books, right? And because he was so stringent on ensuring that this system actually worked, it didn't work, but he tried. The planters didn't like him. They hated him. So that is what Williams Green said in his book. Now, there were some problems when it comes to the apprenticeship. And if you notice, ladies, that I'm going to put these, because if you do a paper 2 question, a paper 2 question would ask you to name 3. It would say, discuss 3 problems or the 3 conditions of the apprentice, of the stipendiary magistrate. So 1, when you're discussing these problems, you could say, or if I said 4 problems, you could say 4 problems that the stipendiary magistrate faced were low salary, no sick leave, abused by the planters, overwork, right? So those were the four problems. Now, how are we going to develop this? You develop low salary. 1, they would have received low salary. The salary that they would have received was £300. They had to rely, the mere fact that the salary was low, they had to rely on planters for food and for shelter. Some of them would have gone through hunger, and the cost of living in the Caribbean was very expensive. If they are going to rely on planters for food and shelter, would apprenticeship work?
No, sir.
Why?
Because, all right, the planters, sir, are very much against it. And the persons, it's like, you know, you have a boss that you hate and you have to feed the boss. You're not going to want to feed your boss because your boss is going for everything that you stand for. And even if you have to do, you're going to feed him a little bit of food.
Very good. And also, not only that, it's not the planters who paid the 300 pounds, you know, it's Britain who would have paid them the 300 pounds. But the 300 pounds that Britain paid them was very little. They couldn't live on that 300 pounds. The salary was very low. And so to supplement the salary, then go and beg the planter for food. In fact, Britain sent them from England to the Caribbean and didn't even provide a house for them. So most of them have to basically, you ever hear people use the word catch on the planter's place. So if you are relying on the planters for food and shelter, that means you're not going to be fair. You're not going to be fair. You're going to represent the interests of the planter. So if I come to you and tell you, if planter A is giving you food and somebody from his plantation come and said, listen, you know that planter is not treating me well. He didn't even pay me for the overtime. I'm working for 3 months now, overtime, and I not even get $1 from planter A. You believe that because the stipendary magistrate going to follow up on that case or even record it? No, they are not going to record it. They are not even going to look at the apprentice because they are going to say that, listen, if I should take this action further, then planter A is not going to give me food or planter A is going to evict me from where I'm living. And so low salary was an issue that the stipendary magistrate faced. Another was no sick leave. They received no sick leave. And remember that these were old and retired men. They had no sick leave. They got no leisure time. Right? And many of them actually died from diseases and fever. Most of them died from diseases and fever. So with this, ladies, these were some of the problems that the apprentice faced. Sorry, the stipendary magistrate faced. Another that the stipendary magistrate faced was the abuse of planters. Some planters easily or most time prevented them from entering the plantation. Remember that one of their roles was that they're supposed to inspect the plantation to say that, okay, you're following the rules and you should turn up anytime without any notification. But right now, the planters are saying once the stipendary magistrate comes, the planter just send out the dog or use the same enslaved people to say, lock the gate, don't let him in. Move from my plantation. Yes, that was some of the abuse that they would have faced. They would have also used the newspapers, especially the Jamaica Gleaner, because Jamaica Gleaner would have started in 1834. And the Jamaica Gleaner at the time supported the planters. And so with the abuse that they would have faced, they would have published things in the newspaper. And every time somebody published something in the newspaper, it was something negative about the stipendary magistrate. They were looked down upon by the planters. And the next thing is that the planters easily bribed them. So if an enslaved person came to them and said, listen, if you're going to, you know, if I'm reporting this planter, the planter will give them some money and say, keep quiet. Don't report it. Right? Another was that they were overworked. Now look at how the Caribbean is a very big place. And Britain only appoint one second, Dave. Sorry, ladies. It was the buzzer. I don't know who out here, but I now look on them today. So they were overworked, right? Because Britain would have just appointed 100 stipendary magistrates for the entire Caribbean. And so they had not a lot of stipendary magistrates, and they were expected to visit all the estates. So just imagine if you were appointed as a stipendary magistrate in Jamaica, and say they would have appointed maybe 20. You had quite a lot of plantation, over 100 plantations. And to visit all of these plantations and to go up in some of the mountains and hills, how are you going to monitor? So they were overworked, and the weather condition in Jamaica and Trinidad and Guyana, it weren't conducive. Every minute it would have rain, especially if you were a stipendary magistrate working in the hills of St. Catherine or in St. James. You're going to have problem, and they had no clerk to assist them. And so we know for sure that they were overworked. Now, ladies, apprenticeship was very difficult for the enslaved people, or what they call the apprentice. I prefer to use enslaved because, one, they are not going to reclassify the workers, meaning that if you were an artisan and you never used to work in the field, they're going to send you in the field to work. If you're a domestic and you used to work only in the house, they're going to send you in the field to work. And so they are reassigning people. They are not going to overwork the enslaved. They're already overworking them, but they are not going to put extra pressure on them. And one of the biggest problems I find with the system of apprenticeship was that the enslaved people usually have the provision ground free to work. They usually have that little plot of land that they use to plant all the little things. The planters no charging them money to use the provision ground, and if they don't pay the money, they are going to destroy the provision ground, or they would have destroyed it. And even though they were supposed to still give them allowances, most of the planters remove the allowance from them. Overtime wage, they didn't pay them a thing when it comes to overtime wage. And also remember that another term of apprenticeship was that they were able to purchase their freedom. When you're ready to purchase your freedom, they are going to inflate the price. So if your freedom is supposed to be 200 pounds, right? You go to the planter, you said to the planter, how much to free me? And the planter said 200 pounds. You work it, look overtime, you get little money here, you pay the little rent and the provision ground, you go to the market, sell a little produce, you work at 200 pounds. When you reach back now, the planter going to say, listen, it's not 200 pounds, it's 300 pounds. And then you go and work the 100 pounds, you come back 400 pounds. And so all of that now, ladies, some of them is not going to get their freedom. Now the planters used to provide drinking water for them. They are going to stop provide drinking water. And the women who were the nursing mothers who usually get permission to breastfeed, the planters said, listen, you're under apprenticeship, you're not going to breastfeed. So in fact, they're going to take away that privilege. So in fact, ladies, what happened was that apprenticeship was not lovely. for the enslaved people. Any comments?
Sir,
Go ahead.
when you were saying a while ago, like they only got paid when they did overtime, I feel like that was a method of still trying to keep them enslaved for as long as they could. Because, as you said, they had to pay rent and provisions, etc. So if the little they make during overtime had to go into other things, I feel like that was some idea of the British to keep them in slavery for as long as they could, knowing that they wouldn't have the money to buy their own freedom.
It's very good. I agree. Nelson, and that's one of the reasons why some historians say that this was still slavery. Go ahead, Nelson.
Yes, sir. And just to add to what Akila was saying, the whole apprenticeship system was basically to suck the enslaved as dry as possible, to leave them with nothing because they knew that that the whole slavery system was coming to an end, and so they wanted to get as much out of them as possible. So they
Yes.
overworked them so that they would have a supply of sugar for the next 46 years, so that the industry would not decline so much, and they would be left with enough money to ensure that they could, still live on in the meantime while they find something else to do or some solutions to the problems. And all of these things they made the enslaved pay for just so they would not be left with nothing.
I agree. I completely agree. And so both of you have made very, very good points. So ladies, I know that our time has expired. Remember, tomorrow we're not meeting. You're going to meet in your groups to prepare the presentation. On Thursday, you're going to have your test. On Monday, you're going to do the presentation, the PowerPoint. All right, ladies, enjoy the rest of your day.
Same to you, sir.
Same to
You
you.
too.
You too, sir.